Okay, hello and welcome back to the Land Rover Toolbox videos. What you see before you is an Oxford Migmate welder, which is a MIG welder 200 amp or 201. This is a new addition to our workshop, and believe me, it's taken me some time to wangle some money to be able to get this into the workshop. Right, so Oxford welders, you can find them on the internet, and it's worth actually having a look, especially if you're in the UK and you're patriotic. These are made 100% and designed and made in the UK, and I agree, it does actually count for a lot these days if you actually live in the UK, because the quality will be better than some of the cheaper machines. Right, so the Migmate, if you want to, you can read all the information. It will actually run off a 3.5 kVA generator, and fuse blower is 13 or 16 amp if you're running on higher amperage. 330, for instance, yeah, well, this needs a 32 amp plugged into it, but they all have reverse polarity functions and for spool guns and such like. Arkwright sell them, and you know Arkwright by now because we like Arkwright. They sell some damn good machines, and the machine we have actually bought from them. This was, well, we talked to Andy and he got us a special deal on this. This one was actually a shop sword one. They're good machines. Have a look on the website if you're interested, but what I will tell you is you don't get everything with it. You just get the basic machine, which is pipes and a couple of cables. You've got to buy the torch and the regulator and everything else to go with it separately. Also, I'll just make you aware that Oxford also do plasma cutters, and if you've got 1,500 quid spare, well worth it. Right, so let's have a look at the beast here. If you're not really familiar with MIG welders, basically you have your transformer and everything. You have a torch, which is an on-off switch basically with a cable feed, gas. I've wrapped the gas cable around here because it's actually quite long. It will take a full-size cylinder on there. The controls at the front here, okay, it is actually a DC welder. You can see the sign here, so it's got a transformer in it. Basic controls, you have large amperage steps and smaller amperage steps as well, and a wire feed control and an on-off switch. Not much to it, but there are facilities for optional functions, which is just a grommet, so it'll be interesting actually to see what fits in there. We're not going down that route at the moment, we're just going to go for basics. The earth lead you do get with the machine, and it's a DINS plug, and it also is a DINS plug for the power weld one, so these are fairly standard nowadays. Takes a standard 15 kilogram wire reel, and the rollers are actually geared as well, which on the cheaper ones you don't get like that. So there's plenty of wire there for welding, and of course size does matter. You can see this, the size of it, and it has a 20 litre cylinder on the back end of it. Right, so as I said earlier, it 13 amp, and for higher welding amperages you really need something like a 16 amp, and I'm going to have to change this at some point because we're going to push it a little bit on occasion. It is mobile like most MIG welders are, and you can see it has little wheels here, and it is a little bit of a pain in the backside to get up the ramp there into the house, but I need to put it in the house because this shed is insecure. Also, you want to keep welders in the dry. This is a full-size gas cylinder, and it's the same gas, which is argon with CO2 mix in it. Before you ask, the cylinder with deposit and gas cost about £160, including VAT, so be aware of this. The Adams gas suppliers, they have stockists all over the UK, and we have one in our local town, so it's just a matter of nipping down there and grabbing a cylinder. Now, you might think the deposit is actually quite expensive, but it's not. You get that back when you give the cylinder back. But Adams, just a quick look at them, they do gas for almost everything, and actually this was a bit of an eye-opener seeing this. You can even get hydrogen gas if you want to. The main thing is, the one I got is trade gas, and it's trade welding gas supplies. So anyway, I'll just click through and I'll show you that they have a selection. And through here you'll see that you have the dimensions, the weights, etc. They're also color coded. All gas cylinders for industrial professional use have to be color coded, you know, just in case of fire or whatever. Basically ours one has a green top. You can see rent free 20% CO2 in argon mix. That's a 200 bar pressure on that. And you can see this here, as it says, it's CO2, it's 20% of CO2 in argon, which is good for MIG welding. CO2 on its own I don't think is much good. So anyway, to find a supplier, and you know, obviously I'm not getting sponsored for this, but basically you just go for supplier and then put your postcode in and you'll find where the closest one is. You will need to purchase a regulator, and this one came with a welder. I ordered it specifically, and this has lower increments than the one I've actually fitted because I've put the power weld one. But if you can see that there's a marker on the right hand side one which is marked at 10 litres per minute, and this is sort of like the maximum gas flow that we really want from the gas cylinder. Okay, so yeah, I fitted the power weld one which came with the TIG weld I had. The one we have at work on the cylinder is, well, actually it's a bit too dirty to read, but it works. This is fitted to the piping when you get the machine. You don't really need it unless you have a quick release coupling on your regulator. Basically it will screw in straight away. It is a standard BSP thread. Okay, so there's a fitting which will allow you to do other jobs with. I'll chuck that in the toolbox and keep it for some other time. You should always check the gas joints when you've fitted these with a bit of soap and water just to see if it bubbles up. This will adjust the pressure, and this is the main tap. You don't have to turn it on too much to get a flow. Okay, people who turn it wide open, it's no good. You just need it a quarter of a turn and that'll do. Right, so as you can see, quarter of a turn, man, it's good enough. That's got enough gas flow in there. Now I'm just turning this up to 10 litres a minute. I'll adjust it later, and what you'll see on the gauges, if you turn it off, you'll still have pressure in the line. 200 bar is what they say the cylinder is pressurized to, so it's at 200 bar. Now this gauge will tell you when it's empty. It'll go down to the red, and here we go. There's a litres per minute of gas consumption. The gas comes through here through the shroud, excuse me, and it shields the wire, so we have no oxidization. Basically, you can hear this hiss and the clunk. It is a solenoid that operates it. Underneath here, I think I've showed you this before. Basically, you have a gas jets to let the gas out. The more expensive torches will allow more gas flow, and they have better replaceable fittings. Okay, something to remember. There is a standard fitting on the machine, which basically you have your wire feed through there, your gas, and also the electrical connections, like so. Now this is fairly standard, so you can use different makes of torches, and Benzel is a good make. And here is the other side of it. This is where your wire feed is, your gas is in there, and of course you have your electrical contacts for your on-off switch, or your trigger. So basically you push it in, make sure it is going to go home, and then screw it into place. Now what I want to tell you about this torch fitting here, it is vulnerable. You can see this, it sticks out a fair way. You knock it on something, it might well get broken, so just be aware of that. Wire feed control controls these wire feed rollers, and they do have a pressure that can be applied to it, and you don't want to overdo them. I'll basically do it by feel. There is probably a scientific way to do it. However, you undo it before you pop them off. Now you can see the wire tracks on one roller, and the other roller doesn't have a wire track on it. Okay, these wire tracks are size of wire dependent, so at the moment it's on 0.8 mil wire thickness. The rollers can be turned over like they can be on this welder. Now I'll just show you One side it's a 0.8 to 0.9 thickness wire, and on the other one it's 0.6. So you basically turn it over to the one you want and fit it in, and then you're okay for putting your wire on. This welder comes with 0.6 to 0.8, and there's 2 grooves in this. You can get 1mm wire, which then you need to change the feed roller and the torch liner. Anyway, so what we are using is SIF MIG, 0.8mm diameter, and it's a 15 kilogram reel, available in loads of different places. And of course Arkwright as well do them the same price. I picked this up at the same price locally as what Arkwright are selling it for. And of course when you go to order, you have to put in 15 kilograms for instance, and the wire size, before you can go ahead and buy any wire from Arkwright. Right, so always buy wire in a roll that's been wrapped up, and just be aware that you also have a boss peg in there which needs to be located properly. And yeah, basically drop it in, locate it properly, just get that right in there, and then feed the wire. Now I actually lost the edge. There it is, it's just down there. And you always, with MIG, whatever you do, you always have a set aside cutters handy. And while you're doing this job, which is feeding the wire, make sure you do not let go of the wire, otherwise you have a drum spill and the wire will go everywhere. So you have to keep it under a little bit of tension. It is a little bit fiddly. This one is very close to the drum because it's a small welder, and you can see me feeding through the wire. Okay, you guys that know MIG welders know how to do this, not a problem, but some of the guys don't. So this is an insight how to feed the drum into the rollers. This is as far as you need to go. You put about, I don't know, a 3 onto the pressure onto the wire. You don't want too much pressure and you don't want it too loose. It's something that you get a feel for. So basically after this is done, we can then turn the gas off, and this will save us some money. We just don't want to waste gas if we don't need to. And then set the wire feed onto maximum, turn the machine on, and then just run the wire through to the torch or the lance, or whatever you'd like to call it. But basically I took the tip off the end and pulled the trigger. Okay, and you see how that's the fastest speed that the machine has got, the fastest wire speed. So it's, yeah, just wait until it comes through the end. If it had the tip on, it would probably butt up and wouldn't go through. It's not that finely tuned that it will do. So there you go, there's the wire, and then I can fit the accompanying parts to it, and we'll be ready to go. You always make sure that you have a tip that has a little bit of looseness. Some people put a drill through this just to make it a little bit bigger, which is acceptable. Okay, so I'll cut the wire down, and just get used to this. If you're new to MIG welding, or even if you've been doing it a while, keep your side cutters so you can always have a clean wire when you start again. So basically the lance or the torch and what have you, this is a 3 meter one. You can get 4 meter torches, and that's acceptable. It reaches the bench okay. Now there are different sizes. I've got one of these which is more like a hobby MIG. Now you can see the difference in the size of the shrouds. One would be okay for lower amperage welding, and the ends, well, this is a little bit of a cheaper torch. It's okay, it'll work. Basically all it is an on-off switch with a pipe to supply gas to the tip and to push a wire through to get it to your work. No big deal. Right, so I've already explained about the drive rollers and the different size depending on the wire thickness that you have in your machine. And the other thing you need to remember also is the wire that's pushed through to the lance. You need the right size tips as well, and you'll also need a liner for the lance or the torch. I always keep a varying selection of welding tips and extras because these get on the hot end, so they get hot and they do wear out. They're a consumable item, and so are the shrouds and the torch. Basically most of the machine is after a while. But I like this torch. It's bigger and a little bit more comfortable for me. I paid about £50 for this one. Not the best, but it will do the job. After all, by the time I'm finished, it is going to be a bit of a wreck because it lies about in the dirt, gets dragged about, you lay on it, it gets spatters on it. Anyway, the liner that is in this, okay, now you get different sizes. If you have a 0.8 mil, 0.6 to 0.8, this line will be okay. If not, you take it out, you get the right length, and you get the right liner for the wire you are using. So for instance, if you're using 1 mil, you take the liner out, and believe me, it's a long piece when you're trying to pull it out. It's even longer when you're trying to push it back in as well. So basically that is all of it. Okay, I'm not changing any wire sizes today, but I'm just showing you how the liner comes out. Okay, you change these after a while. When your wire starts to bind up, it's because the liner is worn out or gummed up. Okay, so that's it for this week. You've got nearly 16 minutes of information. We'll see you later in another tutorial.